Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to my Systems, Philosophy, and Mental Models course. Today's lesson is on scarcity-baked imagination. We're talking about the invisible limits that got hardwired into the way that you think before you even knew it was happening. So without further ado, let's get into it. Most people approach AI like a better Google. They bring it small questions, ask it to clean up an email, summarize a paragraph. They treat it like a slightly smarter search engine and wonder why it doesn't feel that powerful. Now, the problem isn't the tool, it's the size of the thinking that those people brought to it. Now, before you can use AI at its full potential, you have to understand something uncomfortable. Your imagination was not built in a vacuum. It was trained by your constraints. Every year you spent working inside limited resources, limited budget, limited technical skill set, limited time, limited access. Your brain quietly recalibrated what it considered possible. The ceiling didn't feel like a ceiling, it just felt like reality. At my video production company, we spent years developing creative instincts around what a music video could look like for the $6,000 to $20,000 range. Now, that wasn't a conscious limitation, it was just the world that we operated in. The result was that our creative imaginations were shaped by those resources. We learned to think in terms of what we could accomplish with what we had, and we got very good at working within those constraints. Now, with the advent of AI, that is working against us because the resource ceiling has moved. It's not just about budget anymore. It's about technical capability, visual scope, and access to tools that used to require entire production houses to execute. A recent video we produced for Taylor Hill titled Die For Me is a clear example of what that shift looks like in practice. The iguana that appears throughout the video as a recurring visual theme, completely AI generated. Multiple establishing shots, the location, the vehicle, all AI. We shot what we could afford to shoot, and then we augmented with AI to expand the world of the video. What was once a hard ceiling became a decision. But that is still the conservative version of what's now possible. The fully unlocked version, a concept with unlimited scope, a world built entirely from imagination, that is territory most of us haven't learned to think in yet. And that's just because we spent years not being allowed to think there. The second ceiling is about domains, not just resources. For most of history, participating in a domain at a high level required years of domain-specific training. Software engineering is the clearest example. Writing code, debugging, testing, architecture, those were skills behind a long education wall. The result was that if you weren't a software engineer, you never really thought in software engineering terms. Things like what apps should exist, what problems are worth solving, what a good system architecture looks like. Those were not your questions to ask. But now, AI has abstracted access to most domains down to language. A rapper like me can now build working software. A producer can ship a product. The barrier to entry isn't completely gone, but it has fundamentally changed in nature. The problem is that access isn't the same as fluency. You can now enter a new domain, but you don't automatically know how to think inside of it. You don't yet know how to identify what's a real problem versus noise. You don't yet know what questions are worth asking, which things are high leverage to build, which are distractions dressed up as opportunities, etc. Now, that type of thinking, which we call systems thinking, is its own skill, and it only develops through practice. And the good news is you can develop it right now in real work with the tools that you already have. Now, the third ceiling is the most granular, the individual things that you assumed you couldn't build, couldn't create, couldn't automate, because those things used to require specialized skills that you didn't have. Here's a concrete example. I use Pinterest constantly to build mood boards. References for visual direction, creative concepts, aesthetic research, and I was manually downloading images one by one so I could use them in other places. It was pretty slow and tedious. So I started searching for a Chrome extension that would handle this, and I found several, but every single one of them was behind a small monthly paywall. And so I opened up Claude and I asked how difficult would it be to build what I was describing. Not difficult, it said. I had a working Pinterest board downloader within 30 minutes of iteration, one that automatically created subfolders, named the files correctly, and processed any board that I pointed it at. I built a tool that turned a manual, repetitive process into something instantaneous. And to be honest, I never would have attempted that a few years ago because I would have thought that it was not something that was within reach. Now, what I just described is what the execution ceiling looks like when it breaks. And it's happening across every domain at every level of complexity every time someone decides to ask whether something is possible instead of assuming that it isn't. The fourth ceiling is psychological, and in many ways it's the most persistent. It's the resistant to replacing processes and systems that you already know, even when you know a better version exists. I have rebuilt my Notion workspace from scratch multiple times. Not tweaked it, not reorganized a few things, gone back to the drawing board, restructured everything, starting over. That costs time and it creates friction. When I made the switch from ChatGPT to Claude, I had context built up, I had custom GPTs dialed in, I knew the interface, I knew how to talk to it to get what I wanted. That switch meant giving all of that up. However, I made the switch anyway because I saw what Claude could do, and staying where I was comfortable was no longer the right choice. Now, this type of thinking applies at every scale. The way you manage your inbox, the way you structure your calendar, the tools you use to take notes, the systems you've built around your creative process. If there's a better way, the cost of staying is compounding every day you don't move. The technology is not waiting. The discipline that matters here isn't just learning new things. It's being willing to drop old ones. Comfortably living inside a tool or system you've outgrown is complacency with a professional cost attached. So let me give you the bigger picture here. What we're actually dealing with is a cognitive engine. AI tools can know your preferences, understand your taste, execute processes on your behalf, and plug agentically into your systems to do work without you having to touch it. That's not a modest upgrade to your existing workflow. That is a fundamental shift in what's possible for a single person or a small team. That is what we're aiming for. But here's the thing about a tool that can do almost anything. It mirrors the size of the imagination you bring to it. If you bring scarcity-shaped thinking, you're going to get scarcity-shaped results. If you bring an unlocked imagination, one that has been deliberately stretched past the ceilings of your constraints that you built, you're going to build things that didn't seem possible from where you were standing at the beginning. That expansion that I'm describing does not happen automatically. It is a practice. It's noticing when you shrink a problem before you've even tried to solve it. It's asking bigger questions. It's building things you don't fully know how to build yet and learning through the process of building them. It's developing the right mental models to gain clarity on your vision and direction. That is what it looks like in practice. So if it wasn't abundantly clear already, scarcity-baked imagination must be overcome. Go build something difficult. The next lesson we're going to get into is actually how to talk to AI. It's a real skill and most people are doing it wrong. So I'll see you there.